The story of Maria Rosa. Welcome, dear listeners, to a new journey through the pages of time. Today I will tell you the story of a young woman whose destiny was rewritten by the hands of love and dignity. A narrative that teaches us that even in the darkest moments, hope can bloom like a rose among thorns. Imagine a time when a woman's worth was measured by her birth, where dreams seemed the privilege of few. But a girl named Maria Rosa proved that a noble heart can transform any destiny. Where are you watching from? Leave me your city in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave that like so more people can know these stories that warm the soul. Year, 1885. Villa of San Lorenzo, Rio Grande do Sul. The Gaucho winter of 1885 crept through the cracks of the small adobe house like an icy blade, and Maria Rosa felt each gust in her thin bones. At 16 years old, her small body curled up among the rags that served as a bed, there on the kitchen floor between the iron stove that had been cold for hours and the back door that never closed properly. Dawn was still a distant promise when her eyes opened. There was no clock in Josefa's house, but Maria Rosa's body knew well the hour of awakening, always before the roosters crowed, always before any soul in the village awakened. Her bare feet touched the packed dirt floor, and she rose in silence, like a ghost that inhabited that house without being seen or heard. Her skillful fingers lit the stove with the twigs she had gathered the evening before. The smoke rose slowly, carrying with it the burnt aroma that permeated her clothes. The only faded calico dress she possessed, mended so many times it looked more like a patchwork quilt. Lazy as an old mare, Josefa's harsh voice cut through the morning silence like a whip. The coffee doesn't make itself. Maria Rosa lowered her head, swallowing the words she would never dare pronounce. Since her father died 3 years before, her life had been reduced to those four walls where she was not a daughter, not a sister, just a burden, a weight that Josefa carried reluctantly and made sure to demonstrate every dawn. The half-sisters, Esperanza and Concepcion, came down the creaking wooden stairs like two princesses in their embroidered nightgowns, their hair protected by lace caps. They looked at Maria Rosa as if she were part of the furniture, something that was there but didn't deserve recognition. The coffee dripped thick and dark from the spout of the iron pot, and Maria Rosa served the three women in silence. For her, only the crumbs of stale bread and what remained of the bitter drink would be left. It had always been this way. It would always be this way. But that very day, while she was washing clothes in the stream that crossed the property, something would change forever. Why does fate choose certain moments to rewrite an entire life? The midday sun punished the stones of the path when the horses' hooves echoed in the distance, approaching like gentle thunder. Maria Rosa was in the yard, hanging clothes on the makeshift line between two pitanga trees, when the sound made her raise her eyes. 3 riders approached the small property, but it was the man at the front who made her heart race inexplicably. Tall, broad-shouldered, he rode a sorrel that seemed to dance under his firm reins. The leather hat shadowed his face, but she could see the clear eyes that seemed to carry the weight of many storms. José Benedicto Silva dismounted, with the elegance of one born to command. His spurs clinked against the patio stones as he walked to the door of the house, where Josefa already awaited him with the best smile she could feign. "Good morning, Doña Josefa. I came to get what we discussed in the village." His voice was deep, measured, charged with the authority of one accustomed to being obeyed. Maria Rosa hid behind the hanging clothes, but couldn't stop observing. There was something about that man that radiated dignity, a silent strength she recognized, because she had always dreamed of possessing it. "Of course, Señor José Benedicto. The girl is right there, working. I'll call her." Josefa gestured toward the yard. "Maria Rosa, come here, creature." The young woman's heart plummeted. She approached slowly, eyes fixed on the ground, hands still damp from work gripping the faded apron. When she finally raised her gaze, she found José Benedicto's eyes fixed on her, studying her with an intensity that made her blush. "Is this the girl who's going to care for my Ana Luisa?" There was something in the question that sounded more like an evaluation than a confirmation. José Benedicto observed her not as Josefa usually did, with disdain and haste, but as if he really saw her, as if she existed. "Yes, sir. She's good for work, obedient, raised in housework since she was small." Josefa lied shamelessly, omitting the years of mistreatment. Maria Rosa remained motionless, feeling the weight of that moment. Her future was being decided there, between two strangers, and she didn't even have an active voice, But when Jose Benedicto addressed her directly, something changed in the air. "Girl, can you read?" The question surprised her. She nodded timidly, remembering the lessons her father had given her before dying, the nights when he had taught her to decipher words in the old family Bible. "Perfect. You'll need it to teach my daughter." He turned to Josefa. "She comes with me today." And so, between a question and a decision, Maria Rosa discovered that sometimes freedom comes disguised as new servitude. The ride to Silva Ranch lasted all afternoon, and Maria Rosa rode on a gentle mare, led by Jose Benedicto's farmhands. Her bundle of belongings, 2 changes of clothes, her mother's wool shawl and her father's Bible, was tied to her back, light as her hope and heavy as her uncertainty. When the wooden gates of the ranch opened, Maria Rosa had to contain a sigh of admiration. The big house rose imposing in the middle of the plain, 2 stories tall, with a wide veranda that embraced the entire facade. Manicured gardens surrounded the construction, where ancient rose bushes exhaled perfume and jasmine vines wound around carved wooden columns. The corrals stretched for hectares, where zebu cattle grazed peacefully under the cloudless sky. It was a world different from everything she had known, a place where dignity seemed to sprout from the very earth. "Doña Benedicta," Jose Benedicto called, and a middle-aged lady appeared on the veranda. The governess descended the steps with elegance, her grayish hair gathered in an impeccable bun, her dark but well-cut dress revealing a woman who knew her place and valued it. Her eyes, though severe, didn't carry the cruelty that Maria Rosa knew so well. "This is Maria Rosa, who came to care for Ana Luisa," Jose Benedicto explained. Doña Benedicta examined the newly arrived young woman with attention, but without judgment. There was wisdom in her gaze, as if she could see beyond the worn clothes and apparent timidity. "Welcome, child, come, I'll show you your room." Your room. The words resonated in Maria Rosa's mind like a miracle. She followed Doña Benedicta up the polished wooden stairs, admiring the portraits on the walls, the lustrous furniture, the lace curtains that filtered the afternoon light. The room was small but cozy, with a real bed, a light wood dresser, and a window that looked out to the garden. Maria Rosa touched the mattress with reverence as if she feared it might be a dream. "Little Ana Luisa lost her mother in childbirth," Doña Benedicta explained, her voice softening. "She needs affection, not just care. You seem to have the heart for that." Before Maria Rosa could respond, a sharp little voice echoed through the corridor. "Papa's back! Papa's back!" Ana Luisa appeared running, her golden hair flying like ribbons in the wind, her blue eyes shining with happiness. When she saw Maria Rosa, she stopped abruptly, curiosity taking the place of euphoria. "Who is she, Papa?" Jose Benedicto knelt to be at his daughter's height, his large hands gently touching her little face. "This is Rosa, my flower. She came to live here and take care of you." Ana Luisa approached Maria Rosa with the natural courage of children, her little eyes studying every detail of the young woman's face. "Are you going to be my new mama?" The innocent question made Maria Rosa's heart tighten. She knelt too, staying at the same height as the girl, and for the first time in a long while she smiled truly. "I'm going to take care of you, as if you were the greatest treasure in the world." And in that moment, unknowingly, she had just promised her own heart. The days followed at Silva Ranch like pages of a book that Maria Rosa had never imagined being able to read. Mornings began with Ana Luisa jumping on her bed, golden curls disheveled, asking Rosita, as she had affectionately nicknamed her, to tell her another story from the Bible. Maria Rosa discovered a talent she didn't know she possessed, the gift of transforming scriptures into fairy tales. David became a brave little shepherd, Ruth became a loyal princess, and Ana Luisa listened to everything with wide eyes, always asking if she could be like them when she grew up. "You already are, my doll," Maria Rosa would respond, combing the girl's silky hair. "You already have Esther's brave heart." It was during these intimate moments that Jose Benedicto sometimes appeared at the bedroom door, observing them in silence. Maria Rosa felt his presence before seeing him, as if the air changed when he approached. In those moments, her heart raced so much she feared he might hear it. One autumn morning, when the leaves of the plane trees were beginning to turn golden, Jose Benedicto appeared in the garden, where Maria Rosa was teaching Ana Luisa to make daisy crowns. He carried a brown paper package in his hands. "For you," he said, extending the package toward Maria Rosa. She opened it with trembling fingers and found a fine cotton dress in a grayish-blue tone, with small flowers embroidered on the collar. It was simple, but with an elegance she had never possessed. Senor Jose Benedicto, I can't accept. You can and will accept. His voice was firm, but gentle. A lady of the house deserves appropriate clothing. Lady of the house. The words resonated in Maria Rosa's heart like bells of a distant church. She held the dress against her chest, feeling the soft fabric like a promise of dignity. Ana Luisa clapped, radiant. How beautiful, Rosita. You're going to look just like a princess. But it was Jose Benedicto's gaze that made her understand something was changing between them. There was tenderness there, a silent admiration she didn't know if she dared interpret. That afternoon, while sewing a small adjustment to the new dress, Maria Rosa heard voices on the veranda. Doña Carolina, the elegant widow who lived in the village, had arrived for a visit, bringing her usual crystallized sweets and that melodious laugh that echoed throughout the house. Jose Benedicto, you need to think about the future, Carolina was saying, her voice loaded with insinuations. Ana Luisa needs a real mother, and you deserve a companion worthy of your position. Maria Rosa closed her eyes, feeling reality knock on the door like a cold storm. For a moment, she had forgotten who she was, where she came from. For a moment, she had allowed herself to dream. But don't some dreams arise precisely to become reality? The night of the fandango at the neighboring ranch painted the sky orange-red while the last carts moved away through the hills. Jose Benedicto had left with Carolina, who had insisted on accompanying him, leaving Maria Rosa in the company of Ana Luisa and Doña Benedicta. But he had returned early, even before the moon was fully born. Maria Rosa was on the veranda, rocking Ana Luisa, who had fallen asleep in her lap after a night of stories. The night air brought the aroma of jasmine and the distant song of frogs from the pond. It was one of those nights when the sky seemed so low you could almost touch the stars with your fingertips. The sound of horse hooves in the patio made her lift her head. Jose Benedicto appeared on the veranda, still wearing the dark suit from the dance, but with an expression she had never seen before. There was something troubled in his eyes, as if he carried a silent storm in his chest. "Did she fall asleep?" he asked, approaching slowly. "A little while ago." Maria Rosa made a motion to get up, but he gestured for her to remain seated. Jose Benedicto settled in the chair beside her, his eyes lost in the starry immensity. For long minutes only the choir of crickets filled the silence between them. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded different, more vulnerable. "Do you know why I came back early?" Maria Rosa didn't dare answer. She just waited, her heart beating like a drum in her chest. "Because all the time I was there, I could only think about coming home. And home, Maria Rosa, isn't just this place. It's where you and Ana Luisa are." The words fell between them like petals of a flower opening in the moonlight. Maria Rosa felt tears burn her eyes, but didn't let them fall. Was she hearing what her heart wanted to hear? "Senor Jose Benedicto." "Jose, just Jose," he interrupted, leaning forward. "You transformed this house into a home, Maria Rosa. You transformed my daughter into a happy child, and you transformed my heart into a place where I didn't know love could dwell again." The silence that followed was charged with unspoken promises. Maria Rosa looked at Ana Luisa, who slept so serenely in her arms, and then at the man who had just opened his heart before her. "I'm not a lady of society," she finally murmured. "I have no dowry, no family of standing." "You have something much more valuable." Jose Benedicto stood and extended his hand to her. "You have a pure heart and a soul that illuminates everything around you." Maria Rosa looked into his eyes and saw there a truth she had never dared dream. Slowly, she placed Ana Luisa on the straw sofa and accepted the extended hand. When she stood, they faced each other and the world seemed to stop. "Marry me, Maria Rosa. Be my wife, the mother Ana Luisa already has in her heart, the lady of this ranch. And be the owner of my heart forever," she completed, surprising herself with her courage. The kiss that sealed that promise was sweet as wild honey, soft as the breeze that swayed the jasmine, and deep as the love that had just been born between two souls that recognized each other. But would love be enough to overcome the prejudices of an entire society? The news of the engagement between Jose Benedicto Silva and Maria Rosa spread through the neighboring ranches like fire on dry grass. In the village church, in the dry goods stores, in the mate circles of Sunday afternoons, nothing else was talked about. The region's most prosperous rancher had lost his mind over a girl with no dowry or weighty surname. Carolina was the first to appear at Silva Ranch 3 days after the announcement. She arrived in a decorated carriage, wearing her best moss-green silk dress, her hair elaborately styled as if going to a party and not to war. Maria Rosa received her in the main parlor, trying to hide the nervousness that contracted her stomach. Doña Benedicta remained nearby, like a silent guardian, polishing a display case that already gleamed. "My dear," Carolina began, her voice sweet as brown sugar but sharp as a razor, "you're very young and certainly don't understand the situation you're getting into." Maria Rosa kept her hands crossed on her lap, struggling to maintain the composure that Doña Benedicta had taught her. "You can speak clearly, Doña Carolina. I'm not a child. José Benedicto is a respected man, landowner, future leader of the region. He needs a wife who is up to his social position. Someone who can receive authorities, organize balls, converse about politics and business." Each word was a stab at Maria Rosa's pride, but she remained firm as the quebrachos of the hills. "And you think Señor José Benedicto didn't think about that before asking me to marry him?" Carolina realized her subtle weapons weren't working and changed strategy. "Dear, be reasonable. You can have a comfortable life here as a governess, caring for the girl, but marriage, that will bring dishonor to him and unhappiness to you." It was then that José Benedicto entered the room, coming from the field with mud-stained boots and hat in hand. His eyes found Maria Rosa's first, in a look that clearly said no force on earth could change his decision. "Doña Carolina," he greeted her, polite but cold, "what an unexpected pleasure. José Benedicto, I need to speak with you alone. It's about this mistake." "There's no mistake," he interrupted, approaching Maria Rosa and placing his hand on her shoulder in a protective gesture. "Just a man who found the woman he wants by his side for the rest of his life." Carolina's face turned red as a ripe pitanga fruit, but she still tried one last move. "And your neighbors, your business. Do you really think? Let my neighbors worry about their own lives, and my business prospers or fails by the quality of my work, not by my wife's surname." Carolina stood with wounded dignity, adjusting her skirts like a cat bristling its fur. "You're going to regret this, José Benedicto. And when that happens, remember that I tried to save you from this madness." She left without saying goodbye, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and bitterness. José Benedicto knelt before Maria Rosa, taking her trembling hands in his. "If you want to give up, I'll understand," he said, his voice loaded with tenderness. "I don't want you to suffer because of me." Maria Rosa looked deeply into his eyes and saw there all the strength she needed. "I don't give up, José. We'll face this together." But 2 weeks before the wedding, an unexpected visit would again test the courage of her heart. Josefa's carriage appeared on the ranch road one grey August morning, loaded with old furniture and belongings that betrayed a forced move. Maria Rosa saw it coming from her room window and felt her stomach contract like a closed fist. Josefa got down from the vehicle with difficulty, leaning on an improvised cane, her thin face marked by hardship. Esperanza and Concepcion followed her, wearing dresses that had once been elegant, but now seemed like faded fantasies from a dance that had ended. "Maria Rosa!" Josefa shouted from the patio, her voice loaded with a humility the young woman had never heard before. "I need to talk to you." Doña Benedicta appeared beside Maria Rosa at the window, her lips pressed in a line of disapproval. "You don't need to go down, child. I can send them away." But Maria Rosa knew that encounter was inevitable. She breathed deeply and went down the stairs, feeling each step like a step back to the past she was trying to forget. Josefa waited for her on the veranda, and when Maria Rosa appeared, wearing the blue dress José Benedicto had given her, her hair tied with ribbons looking like a true lady, the stepmother's expression transformed into a mixture of envy and desperation. "My daughter," Josefa began, and the word daughter sounded false as copper coin. "I came to get you. We're in need. The property was sold to pay debts." The half-sisters remained behind their mother, eyes downcast, ashamed of the situation. Maria Rosa felt a pang of pity, but didn't let it soften her determination. "I'm sorry for your situation," Maria Rosa said, maintaining distance. "But I'm not going back. You don't understand." Josefa approached, trying to touch the young woman's arm, who instinctively stepped back. "We're family. You have an obligation to take care of us." "Family?" Maria Rosa's voice came out stronger than she expected. "Where was that family when I slept on the kitchen floor? Where was it when I worked like a slave without receiving even affection in return?" Josefa stepped back as if she had been slapped. Her features hardened, revealing the true nature that had always hidden behind the mask of authority. "You were always ungrateful. We gave you shelter, food. You gave me scraps, Maria Rosa interrupted, surprising herself with her courage. And now that you discovered those scraps grew and became a lady, you want me back? It was when José Benedicto appeared, coming from the corrals with farmhand Juan Antonio. His presence changed the entire atmosphere of the patio, as if the sun had come out from behind the clouds. Any problem here? He asked, naturally positioning himself beside Maria Rosa. Josefa tried to smile, but the result was a grotesque grimace. Señor José Benedicto, I'm Maria Rosa's stepmother. I came to get her because— You're wasting your time, Signora, José Benedicto interrupted with polite firmness. Maria Rosa is my fiancée and will be my wife in 2 weeks. She's not going anywhere except to the altar. The silence that followed was tense as a guitar string before breaking. Josefa looked from one to the other, finally realizing she had forever lost any power over the young woman she had once controlled. You're going to regret this, she murmured, getting back into the carriage. People like us don't change class so easily. You're mistaken, Señora, Maria Rosa responded, intertwining her arm with José Benedicto's. People like me change when they find someone who sees their true worth. And so, with the past finally buried, only 6 days remained for Maria Rosa to become a Silva. Silva Ranch's chapel had never seemed so small and at the same time so majestic as that morning of August 30th, 1885. The whitewashed walls reflected the golden light entering through the simple stained glass, and the perfume of white roses that Doña Benedicta cultivated in the garden permeated the air with the sweetness of eternal promises. Maria Rosa was in the room that had been hers for 5 months, and that she would leave forever that day, not because she was leaving, but because when she came down from there, she would be the lady of that entire ranch. Her hands trembled while Doña Benedicta arranged the mother-of-pearl buttons of the wedding dress. The dress was a work of art, woven in white linen, embroidered by the governess herself during the nights of recent months. Each stitch had been given with love. Each embroidered flower was a silent prayer for the happiness of the girl she had learned to love as a daughter. You're ready, my dear, Doña Benedicta murmured with moist eyes. I never saw a more beautiful bride. Ana Luisa entered the room like a ray of sunshine, wearing a light pink dress, her hair adorned with daisies. In her small hands, she carried a wicker basket full of rose petals that she had gathered at dawn. Rosita, you look just like a real princess, the girl exclaimed, clapping. Maria Rosa knelt to be at the little one's height, adjusting one of the daisies in the golden curls. And you look just like a fairy godmother, my doll. Below in the chapel, José Benedicto waited by the improvised altar. He had invited only the closest neighbors and the ranch hands, simple men who respected him not for his money, but for his character. The priest had come from the village especially for the ceremony, an elderly man with kind eyes who had known José Benedicto since he was a boy. When the chapel doors opened and Maria Rosa appeared, the silence was so profound you could hear the beating of Bentaveo wings in the garden. She walked slowly, with no father to lead her, but with the dignity of one who had finally found her place in the world. Ana Luisa went ahead, scattering rose petals on the polished stone floor, her giggles echoing through the walls like celestial music. With each step Maria Rosa took, with each petal that settled at her feet, an entire life of pain and humiliation was left behind. When she reached the altar, and José Benedicto took her hands, the entire world seemed to fit in that moment. The vows were simple, but loaded with a truth all present could feel. I promise to love, respect, and care for you until death do us part, said José Benedicto, his strong voice echoing through the chapel. I promise to be your faithful companion, loving mother to our Ana Luisa and worthy lady of this house, Maria Rosa responded, surprising everyone with the firmness of her voice. The kiss that sealed the union was chaste but deep, and when they turned to the guests as husband and wife, the applause mixed with the ringing of the chapel bells, announcing to the entire region that Maria Rosa was no longer the abandoned girl who slept on the kitchen floor. She was now Señora Silva. But would the newly conquered happiness resist the trials that fate still held in store? The winter of 1886 arrived at the ranch with uncommon ferocity, bringing icy rains that lashed the windows and winds that howled through the cracks like restless ghosts. Maria Rosa had just discovered she carried a life in her womb when José Benedicto began showing the first signs of the illness that would almost take him away from her. It was March when he returned from the fields with high fever, his body trembling like a green branch, his cheeks burned by the fire that raged in his veins. The village doctor diagnosed typhoid fever, and his words fell on Maria Rosa like stones. Only God can save him now. But Maria Rosa didn't accept that sentence. With Ana Luisa sleeping in her room and the child growing in her womb, she transformed into a silent warrior, fighting against death with the only weapons she possessed, love and faith. For 2 months, she didn't leave the room where José Benedicto deliriated between life and death. Doña Benedicta cared for the house and Ana Luisa, while Maria Rosa dedicated herself entirely to her sick husband. She prepared herbal teas she had learned from a black healer in the region, prayed novenas her mother had taught her as a child, and talked with him for hours, telling stories of a future they would still have together. "José, you can't leave me now," she murmured on an especially difficult night when the fever was so high it seemed his body would catch fire. "Our child needs to know the father. Ana Luisa needs her papa, and I need the man who taught me I had worth." Her hands, once delicate, became strong from so much caring. She washed her husband's feverish body with damp cloths, forced him to drink bitter teas, massaged his temples when headaches made him groan. It was work that would destroy a fragile woman, but Maria Rosa discovered within herself a strength she didn't even know she possessed. In the early hours of a May day, when the first frost had painted the ranch fields white, José Benedicto opened his eyes lucid for the first time in weeks. He found Maria Rosa asleep in the chair beside his bed, one hand resting on the belly where the child was growing, the other holding a rosary. "Maria Rosa!" His voice came out hoarse but clear. She woke immediately, and when she saw his focused and conscious eyes, the tears she had held for 2 months finally rolled free down her cheeks. "You came back to me," she whispered, touching his face with trembling fingers. "I never left," he responded, covering her hand with his, still weak but firm. "Your voice brought me back whenever I tried to leave." The recovery was slow but steady. José Benedicto returned to walking, first supported by Maria Rosa, then alone through the house corridors. He returned to smiling when Ana Luisa told him about the adventures she had lived while he was sick, and he returned to dreaming when he placed his hand on Maria Rosa's belly and felt the baby move. "I almost lost you," he said one afternoon, watching Ana Luisa play in the garden. "But you didn't lose me," Maria Rosa responded, snuggling in his arms. "And now we're stronger than before." However, the rediscovered happiness would again be tested by an unexpected arrival that would open old wounds and create new dilemmas. The autumn of 1886 painted the plane tree leaves golden when the carriage appeared on the ranch road, raising a cloud of red dust that stood out against the grayish-blue sky. Maria Rosa was in the garden, her belly already well pronounced at 7 months pregnant, teaching Ana Luisa to embroider flowers on a small towel when the noise of wheels on gravel made her look up. The woman who got down from the carriage was young, perhaps Maria Rosa's age, but carried on her shoulders a weight that made her seem older. Her brown hair was simply gathered, and the dark dress, though clean, showed signs of careful mending. In her hand she held the little hand of a boy about 3 years old, whose clear eyes were exactly like José Benedicto's. Maria Rosa's heart raced when she saw those familiar eyes in the child's face. Something in her chest told her that her life was about to change again, and this time perhaps not for the better. "Good afternoon," the woman said, approaching slowly. "I'm Isabel. I'm looking for José Benedicto Silva." Ana Luisa dropped her sewing and ran inside the house, shouting, "Papa, there are visitors," leaving Maria Rosa alone with the stranger and the revelation written in the features of that boy. José Benedicto appeared on the veranda, and when his eyes met the woman's, Maria Rosa saw something that chilled her blood. Recognition, and guilt, and fear. "Isabel," he murmured, slowly descending the steps. "What are you doing here?" "My husband died of tuberculosis 3 months ago." Her voice was calm but loaded with pain. "I have no one else, José Benedicto, and Juan Pedro needs to know his father." The silence that followed was so heavy, it seemed the very air had thickened. Maria Rosa felt the child move restlessly in her womb, as if he too sensed the approaching storm. José Benedicto looked at the boy, who hid behind his mother's skirts, and Maria Rosa saw in her husband's face an inner struggle that broke her heart. Slowly she stood, supporting herself on the chair arm, and approached the group. "Is this your son?" she asked, her voice coming out firmer than she expected. José Benedicto closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, there were tears there. "It was one night in Porto Alegre after my first wife died. I was lost in grief, drank too much." He looked at Maria Rosa with desperation. "When I learned about Isabel's marriage to a city merchant, I thought I would never again. So it's true, Isabel interrupted softly. You married again. Maria Rosa placed her hand on her belly, feeling the child kick forcefully, as if reacting to the moment's tension. She looked at José Benedicto, at Isabel, at the boy who had the eyes of the man she loved, and made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. You must be tired from the journey, she said, addressing Isabel. Doña Benedicta can prepare a room for you in the guest house. Isabel looked at her with amazement, clearly expecting hostility, or at least coldness. I didn't come to cause problems, she said quickly. I just wanted Juan Pedro to know his father, and maybe José Benedicto could help with some work. We'll discuss all of this, Maria Rosa responded, surprising herself with her own serenity. First, let's take care of immediate needs. But how can a woman's heart be big enough to embrace the most painful truth and still choose love? Night fell over Silva Ranch, loaded with tension and unspoken words. Maria Rosa had installed Isabel and Juan Pedro in the guest house, a smaller but comfortable construction near the pond, and now walked through the corridors of the big house like a restless ghost, one hand always resting on the belly, where her child seemed agitated by the day's shocks. José Benedicto was in the library, where he had taken refuge after the silent dinner. She found him leaning over the desk, head in his hands, seeming to carry the world's weight on his shoulders. José, she said softly, closing the door behind her. He raised his eyes and she saw there a mixture of shame, fear, and love that made her heart tighten. Maria Rosa, how can I ask forgiveness for something like this? How can I explain? You don't need to explain, she interrupted, approaching slowly. You were a widower, you were suffering. That happened before we met. But I should have told you when I learned she was pregnant. I should have assumed responsibility. And you did. Maria Rosa sat in the chair facing the desk. You paid for the birth expenses and her wedding, didn't you? I saw the receipts in the drawer when I was looking for paper for Ana Luisa to draw. José Benedicto looked at her surprised. You knew? I suspected there was something. A man like you doesn't keep money in a drawer without reason. She extended her hand over the table, touching his fingers. The question now is, what are we going to do? I don't know, he confessed, his voice loaded with desperation. Juan Pedro is my blood. I can't abandon him. But Isabel, how can you accept this? How can you be so calm? Maria Rosa stood and walked to the window overlooking the garden. Outside, she could see the weak light from the lamp in the guest house, where a woman and child tried to find their place in a world that didn't offer them many options. I'm calm because I understand what it is to have no place in the world, she said without turning. I understand what it is to depend on others' kindness to survive, and I understand what it is to love a child who doesn't carry our blood as if they were our own. She turned toward José Benedicto, and there was a determination in her eyes that he recognized, the same strength that had made her face his illness, the same courage that had brought her from servitude to that position of dignity. Isabel can stay. She can work as a seamstress. I saw her in the boys' clothes. They're well made. Juan Pedro can grow up here, know his father, play with our children. Maria Rosa, but with one condition, she continued firmly. Total honesty. No secrets, no half-truths. Isabel needs to understand this is our home, our family, and she's welcome as a worker and mother of her son, not as anything else. José Benedicto stood and walked to her, taking her hands with a reverence bordering on adoration. How can you be so generous? How can you have such a big heart? Maria Rosa smiled, and for the first time since Isabel's arrival, the smile reached her eyes. Because I learned from you that true love doesn't diminish when divided. It multiplies. And so, on an autumn night in 1886, Silva Ranch prepared to shelter a family different from any other, united not only by blood, but by the conscious choice to love. 8 years passed like tranquil rivers after the storm. Silva Ranch in 1893 was a place where the echo of children's laughter mixed with the murmur of wheat fields that José Benedicto had planted beyond the pastures, diversifying production and making the property even more prosperous. Maria Rosa, now 24 years old, was on the big house veranda one golden December afternoon, watching her children play in the garden. Carlos, 7 years old, had inherited his father's clear eyes and his mother's sweet temperament, and ran after chickens with Rosa, 3 years old, who laughed heartily with her brown curls dancing in the wind. A little apart but participating in the game were Ana Luisa, now a 12-year-old young lady with the airs of a little dame, and Juan Pedro, 11 years old, who for all practical purposes was a brother to the others, though he called Maria Rosa affectionately Tia Rosita. Isabel appeared on the veranda of the smaller house they had built for her near the pond, hanging clothes on the line. Her hair was grayer, but her face had gained the serenity of one who had found her place in the world. She worked as a seamstress for regional families, was respected for her skill and discretion, and maintained with Maria Rosa a relationship of mutual respect that over the years had transformed into a careful but sincere friendship. "Mama, Juan Pedro said he can teach me to lasso," Carlos shouted, running toward the veranda. "Only if Tia Rosita allows," Juan Pedro responded, having learned early to respect Maria Rosa's authority over the other children. "You can play, but carefully," she said, stroking her son's sweaty hair. "And nothing about lassoing chickens, you hear?" José Benedicto appeared coming from the corrals, mounted on his favorite sorrel, and the smile that opened on his face when he saw the domestic scene was that of a man who had found complete happiness. At 41 years old, some wrinkles marked his eyes, but they were wrinkles of smiles and sun, not worries. "How was Porto Alegre?" Maria Rosa asked when he climbed the veranda steps. "Business is going well, cattle demand is growing, and so is our reputation." He sat beside her on the wooden bench he had made years before. "But the best thing about any trip is always coming home." Ana Luisa approached, already with the composure of a young lady, but still with that mischievous gleam in her eyes. "Papa, did you bring any news from the city?" "I did," he smiled, taking small packages from his pocket. "New ribbons for you girls and an adventure book for the boys." The commotion that followed filled the air with joy, but was interrupted by Isabel, who approached the main veranda with a serious expression. "José Benedicto, Maria Rosa, I need to talk to you." She rarely addressed the big house outside necessary occasions, so her presence caused slight apprehension. Maria Rosa gestured for the children to continue playing and turned toward Isabel. "I received a marriage proposal," Isabel said without preamble, "from Señor Joaquin, from the village. He's a widower, owns a fabric shop, is a good man." The silence that followed was loaded with meanings. Maria Rosa looked at José Benedicto, who maintained a neutral expression, though she could perceive he was processing the news's implications. "And Juan Pedro?" Maria Rosa asked. "Joaquin said he accepts him as a son. It would be a new opportunity, a different life in the village." Isabel paused. "But I'll only accept if you agree. Juan Pedro loves this place, loves you. I don't want to tear him from here if it's not best for him." José Benedicto stood and walked to the veranda's balustrade, observing the children who played, without suspecting their lives might be about to change. "Juan Pedro will always have a place here," he said finally. "Whatever your decision, Isabel, he's welcome at this ranch whenever he wants." But could a family built with such care resist this separation as well? The conversation about Isabel and Juan Pedro's future extended through the afternoon, but it was the boy himself who brought the solution to the dilemma. When they called the boy to explain the situation, he listened to everything in silence, with the seriousness of someone much older than his 11 years. "Mama," he said finally, addressing Isabel, "is Señor Joaquin really a good man?" "Yes, my son. He would treat us well." Juan Pedro looked around, absorbing every detail of the ranch that was the only home he remembered. His eyes passed over José Benedicto, who represented the father figure he had always known, over Maria Rosa, who had given him maternal love without ever making him feel less important than the other children, over Ana Luisa, Carlos and Rosa, who were his siblings in everything except blood. "I want Mama to be happy," he said with impressive maturity. "If marrying Señor Joaquin will make her happy, then that's what we should do." Isabel knelt before her son, eyes moistened. "But what about you, my love? How do you feel about leaving all this?" Juan Pedro looked at José Benedicto, who approached and placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. "My son," José Benedicto said, his voice loaded with emotion, "you'll always be my son wherever you are, and this ranch will always be your home. When you want to visit us, when you want to spend vacations, when you simply want to be with us, the doors will be open. And besides," Maria Rosa added, surprising everyone, "the village isn't that far. We can visit each other frequently." Ana Luisa, who had listened to the entire conversation in silence, approached Juan Pedro and took his hand. "You're going to be my brother forever, no matter where you live." Carlos and Rosa, still too small to completely understand the situation, ran to hug Juan Pedro, as if sensing something important was happening. The decision was made that afternoon. Isabel would accept Joaquin's proposal, and Juan Pedro would go with her to begin a new life in the village. But it would be a separation without rupture, a change without abandonment. Preparations for the move took several weeks, and each day was a mixture of sadness and hope. Maria Rosa helped Isabel prepare her trousseau for the new marriage, sewing together on the veranda while watching the children play for the last time as siblings who shared the same roof. "Thank you," Isabel said one of those afternoons without raising her eyes from the sewing. "For what?" Maria Rosa asked. "For giving me a family when I had nothing, for treating my son as if he were yours, for showing me it's possible to be strong without being hard, generous without being foolish." Maria Rosa stopped sewing and looked at the woman who for 8 years had been a constant presence in their lives. "We thank you. You taught us that family isn't only who is born with us, but who we choose to love." The departure day arrived on a clear January morning in 1894. Joaquin's carriage was loaded with Isabel and Juan Pedro's belongings, and the entire ranch family gathered for the farewell. José Benedicto hugged Juan Pedro for a long time, whispering promises of visits and guarantees of eternal love. Maria Rosa kissed the boy's forehead, giving him a small crucifix that had belonged to her father. "So you remember you always have a family here," she said. When the carriage finally departed, raising dust on the road leading to the village, the family stood on the veranda, waving until it disappeared around the bend. "Will they be all right?" Carlos asked with a child's innocent concern. "Yes," Maria Rosa responded, pulling him into an embrace. "And so will we." But it would be in reflecting on this farewell that Maria Rosa would finally understand the true dimension of the journey she had traveled. 20 years later, on a golden summer afternoon in 1913, Maria Rosa Silva sat in the same veranda where she had received so many revelations and made so many important decisions. At 44 years old, she was a respected lady throughout the region, known for both her kindness and wisdom. Her hair, now greyish, was gathered in an elegant bun, and her hands, which had once trembled with fear and uncertainty, now firmly held Ana Luisa's newborn grandson. The girl she had raised as a daughter had become an admirable woman, married to a doctor from the capital and mother of 3 children. Carlos, now a 27-year-old young man, had assumed part of the ranch administration and married the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Rosa, a 23-year-old young woman, was a teacher at the village school and still single, dedicating herself to educating regional children. Juan Pedro, who had become a prosperous merchant in the village, regularly visited the ranch with his wife and children. Isabel had been happy in her second marriage and lived until 50 years old, always grateful for the second chance life had given her. José Benedicto, at 65 years old, walked more slowly but still rode his horses and personally cared for ranch business. His love for Maria Rosa had grown over the years, transforming into deep and serene devotion. That special afternoon, a young woman arrived at the ranch in a simple carriage, carrying only a small bundle of clothes. It was Esperanza, daughter of Concepcion, one of Maria Rosa's half-sisters, who had been orphaned and came asking for work. "Tia Maria Rosa," the 15-year-old girl said, using the respectful treatment the entire region had adopted, "I came to ask if you can give me an opportunity." Maria Rosa looked at that young woman and saw herself so many years before. The frightened eyes, the poor but clean clothes, the hurt but not destroyed pride. It was as if time had come full circle, offering her the chance to be for that child what José Benedicto had been for her. "Of course you can stay, my dear," Maria Rosa said, standing and extending her hand toward the young woman. This house always had room for those who need a new beginning. While leading Esperanza inside the house, showing her the room that would be hers and explaining the ranch's activities, Maria Rosa reflected on the extraordinary journey she had lived. From abandoned girl to respected lady, from rejected servant to beloved matriarch, from wounded heart to source of love and wisdom. Each pain had transformed into understanding, each humiliation into strength, each tear into gratitude. That night, sitting again on the veranda beside José Benedicto, watching the stars that shone over the ranch fields, Maria Rosa murmured, "Do you know what I learned in all these years?" "What?" he asked, enveloping her in his arms. "That it doesn't matter where we start. What matters is where we choose to arrive. And that true love has the power to rewrite any destiny." José Benedicto kissed her grayish hair, still feeling the same rapture as the first day. "And you, my Rosa, rewrote not only your destiny, but mine, Ana Luisa's, Isabel's, everyone who was lucky enough to cross your path." The night wind brought the aroma of blooming jasmine, and Maria Rosa closed her eyes, feeling complete. She had found her place in the world, not because someone had given it to her, but because she had learned to build it with her own hands, her own heart, her own faith. The girl who had once slept on the cold kitchen floor was now the lady of one of Rio Grande do Sul's most prosperous ranches. But more important than that, she was a woman who had learned that a person's true worth isn't in their birth or position, but in the capacity to love, forgive, and elevate others. And so, under the eternal stars of the Gaucho hills, Maria Rosa Silva understood that her story wasn't just about a girl who was saved by love. It was about how love, once received, must be multiplied and offered to the world.